Hello witches, and welcome back to Activist Witch, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they, and today's video we're gonna discuss witchy self-care activities for a very slow January and winter in general. But before we get started, let me remind you that I've opened a Ko-fi, and on there you can do a one-off donation, a monthly donation, or even get a tarot reading with me Italian style. The low-income option starts at £5, and for the month of January 2025, you can still get a year-ahead reading with me that includes your year card. And for the foreseeable future, all my profits from tarot reading will go directly to support Coaches to Gaza, who are part of the mutual aid groups that supports Palestinian people evacuate and relocate to Egypt. So if you decide to support me there, thank you so very much. Also, we are in phase 2 of Witches for Palestine. If you'd like to participate in the raffle, the prize draw is imminent, and you can find all the information in the link description down below. As you can tell, I am slightly low energy. And that's because it's January. I have tried the capitalistic way of thinking, no, why? It's me. No. It's the time of the year. The land is hibernating, and so should we. I know that this is not even one of the 4 options that I recently gave for videos to make. I'll make them all, don't worry. I'll talk about gratitude in dark times. I'll talk about troubleshooting for spells when you think that they don't work. But this specifically came to me because I just literally have very little energy, and I was starting to self-blame. Because, you know, in a capitalist environment, whether we see enough of the macro-social level of the system to want to pull ourselves out, or if we are just into it and we see that everybody is expected to deliver, to perform, to be judged on their performance, either way, the point is that I felt like I wasn't living up to something. And then I was reminded that in my little village, I come from a farmer's village in Italy, if you didn't know, and my grandparents were farmers. I'm the first generation that didn't directly work the land. But even when I was growing up and my grandparents were retired, my grandparents are up here, that's my ancestor altar. Even then, I remember that the winter was very warm and cozy and lived at home. At most, my grandmother was doing a lot of conserves with peppers, with passata, with making stuff that would last and would be canned, basically. And a lot of knitting, a lot of crochet. And I think it's criminal in my case that I actually didn't learn knitting and crochet from her. I have learned crochet in the last few years. And sometimes I genuinely think that I picked it up so quickly because there was her holding a hand over my shoulder going, oh, finally you're getting there. Also historically, like for the funsies, let's mention this. The new year in Roman times started in March. The winter months between December, the 10th month, Dece, 9, 8, and Sept of September, October, November, and December. Those were the number of the months. And that area between December and then the Ides of March was winter, and there was no expectation for people to deliver or do because the weather suggested that being warm and cozy and keep safe was the best thing that one could do. Also because we are at a time where we have sort of managed the elements, but then I look at the floods that happen here in Wales, at the fires that happen in California, and I'm like, no, we really haven't managed, and if anything, we should realize that late-stage capitalism is just devastating the world enough that rightfully the elements are getting back at us. Speaking of why it's not worth following the capitalist rhythm, but the land rhythm. And by the way, I don't have necessarily personal connections in California, but I'll link down in the description below any kind of support and relief for the people affected down in the description below. Even just astrologically, the zodiac starts, the zodiac and the houses begin on the 21st of March when Aries season begins, and therefore, guess what? Spring begins. This idea that coming to the 1st of January we have to do New Year's resolutions to sort of pump ourselves up, and therefore we're supposed to immediately find and gather the energy to make things happen. It's just so counterintuitive considering what the rhythm of natural things is at this time of the year. And personally, I've been feeling myself a bit in a rut. I love that there have been a couple of content creators, like especially Kellyanne Maddox, talking about ways to refresh your practice. And I can totally see why it's necessary or needed during January, because I felt myself like I was in a rut. I mentioned it in my most recent update videos about my deity work. There is something about doing my daily devotions and practice with them that just doesn't deliver if it's just done in a repetitive way because this is the ritual to do. And as an autistic person, sometimes it's really hard for me to discern, am I doing this because it's a devotional that I am dedicating to my deities, or am I doing this because my brain demands that I follow the ritual, but it's a matter of actions done in a certain order rather than being genuinely dedicated to it? And sometimes I genuinely don't have the energy to have the mind space to think and visualize and dedicate other than lighting up the candles. So there have been things that even just looking at my altars, I was like, everything is fine on the surface, but something doesn't quite give me back. And it's probably because I don't have the energy to put in. And to a degree, I think it's fine at this time of the year. I have yesterday finally come around to clean my altars since the beginning of December. Usually it's something that I do monthly. In January, I didn't have the energy or mindset to do it until the 10th of January, and that's fine. While doing that, I sort of revolutionized things a bit. I've cleaned and slimmed down things, especially on my Venus altar. The living room, you might have noticed from how the videos are filmed now, has undergone some sort of revolution in December. I really like it. The novelty of having things in different places, in a way, made it feel like a new house, despite the fact that it's still as safe and cozy as always, which I love. I love our house. But anyway, now I'm getting into just yapping, so I had a structure. Let me try and give you some of the suggestions and ideas by telling you what I have tried to do for the very little energy that I have to still feel involved in my witchy practice during such low energy times. And I should actually advise you to check out the video that I did last year about low energy witchcraft, because this is quite related to that. So if you're interested in this, you might be interested in that as well. One thing that I did, I even had a chat about it with Sofia Righetti, my witchy activist Italian friend. If you don't know her, go check her out. She has a YouTube channel now where she posts her podcast. And despite the fact that it's in Italian, you can get automatically translated captions, so you can still hear what she has to say. And she has always such interesting things to say. But we were chatting the other day, and she was like, I really feel like I still need the Yule season. And I was like, sister, say no more. I am in the same stage. And I know that I have heard that usually, you know, the Christmas tree is actually a Yule tree for everyone. It's a pagan tradition that has been absorbed and cannibalized by Christianity. Which, by the way, I've been to a lecture about feminism and witchcraft, and one of the best sentences of the entire lecture to me was about Christianity being a very cannibalistic religion. Ooh, nice God you have there. Would be a shame if you became a saint. But yeah, the idea honestly started already in December. I was like, I have absolutely no intention of taking down the Yule tree before Imbolc. Supposedly that was the tradition, like you brought the warmth of the evergreens into the house to survive the very darkest time of the year, which was the very beginning of winter. So I have absolutely no intention of taking down my tree, my colorful baubles, the lovely fairy lights on it, until the 1st of Feb. Here in the UK, I think people take the tree down either immediately after Christmas or immediately after New Year's Day. In Italy, it lasts until like the 6th of January because of the Epiphany, La Befana. But I was just like, I don't care. This is staying up until Imbolc. In this dark time, why shouldn't I give myself the warm, cozy embrace of the atmosphere that the fairy lights and all give me? Because it's been established that we have to suffer in January. January is the month for the highest level of depression for a reason. Blue Monday is in January for a reason. Anything that we can do to fight that, we should. Side note to that wasn't even in my notes. If you have a chance to have beeswax candles around you, do consider lighting those up, because legend has it that the temperature and light that beeswax emanate is supposedly the closest kind of flame that there is to the frequency of the sun. And if you have seasonal affective disorder, beeswax candle might vaguely help with that. Of course, it's not a medical thing, and if there are ways to have medical things, do those. But if you have beeswax candles, try that and let me know. I used to make my own beeswax candles, and Raven really liked the flame, and I suspect there might have been some connection there, so I'm just putting it out there. Something that I have tried to do, especially because I also had indeed to readjust the living room, because I basically inverted the space where before I had witchy physical books and the space where I archived my tarot. I had to switch around the shelves. And by doing that, I had a chance to go through every single one of my tarot decks. And it's upsetting that some of them I've cleansed, and I've never used. And I like them. So what I've tried to put myself on the mindset for January is to do daily tarot pulls again, but every time or every day with a different deck. You might have seen on Instagram I'm sharing it, although I'm trying to move from Instagram to Blue Sky and Tumblr, because with the new meta move towards fascism and Project 2025, I am personally not gonna be able to be there still in good conscience when they use my presence as a number to sell to advertisers. So ironically, one of my New Year's resolution is to leave Meta completely by the end of 2025. I already don't have Facebook. I just need to leave Instagram and WhatsApp. On Instagram, I'm being very loud, like mostly daily at this point. I mention, hey, this is my Blue Sky, come say hello. Blue Sky doesn't quite have an algorithm, and it's all based on starter packs. If you can't follow me there, I'll put here what my link to follow me there is. There's a lot of good witches there as well that I've already done the move. With the tag Witch Sky, we find each other, so come along, pond. But yeah, because of that, I am taking pretty much daily pictures of my tarot daily pulls, and so I'm trying to post them on Blue Sky, on Tumblr, having a bit of a chat about them, having a chat about the decks. So that tries to bring a bit of novelty, and usually novelty goes and scratch a bit the itch that we have when we lack dopamine, so I try that way. Something that I've also done in that area is finally actually consider changing the tarot decks that are dedicated to my deities, for pretty much the same reason. I have spoken recently, like in the last couple of videos that I've done about my deity work with Venus and with Vesta, that I've been hesitant to change the decks that I have dedicated to them, exactly because I feel that because I use them pretty much weekly, the more I use them and they live on the altars, the more they sort of carry their power. So I was very hesitant to change them. But I do feel like I'm in a rut with those as well. Also because my tarot reading style has changed since I first dedicated those tarot decks to them, and I feel that using different decks might help me more in understanding their messages now. Beforehand, I was very academic in a way, in the way that I read tarot. The Six of Swords always mean leaving something bad behind, going towards new pastures. And I never necessarily gave attention as much to the way that that Six of Swords is represented in different decks. After a reading that I had with my grandparents and the deck that I use for my grandparents, which is the Relative Tarot, in the autumn, I realized how interesting it is to not only read the meaning of the card as we know it's established, but also reading the specific imagery that there is in that deck, in that card. And that opened a new world for me. The decks that I use for Venus and Vesta, especially for Vesta, it's not graphic enough to help me with that. And so I was tempted to use another deck, but I was reticent for the idea that there's so much power imbued into this deck already. But yeah, when I reset the altars, I was like, I think I need to do this. And I basically asked them to bless these new decks with their power. And as I did for the decks the first time around, I basically put them under their plate for burning incense. So not that the incense falls on the decks, but it still sort of gets its power. They are gonna stay there for a week, and so the next time that I do a reading with them, I'll use the new decks and we'll see how it goes. But at least it brings some novelty into my deity work as well. As I mentioned at the beginning, I have learned crochet in my adult life in the last couple of years, and I genuinely feel like it's something that connects me to my roots and my ancestors, because it is something that I remember my grandmother doing but never learning from her directly. But I was able to pick it up relatively quickly. And I go in phases, like sometimes I am completely hyper-focused on crochet, and then I haven't done something for like a year up until I picked it up again, I think in November or December. Now I'm in that phase that I need to make something for everyone. And I very much enjoy having something in the background and then being able to do crochet. My first and easiest way to learn is actually visual. So more than patterns, I work very well with video tutorials on YouTube. In the last couple of videos, you might notice in the video descriptions that there are links to either the tutorial or the pattern that I have used to make the stuff that I was wearing. In the video about the year cards, the sleeves that I am wearing are based on a YouTube tutorial. And in the last video about breaking familiar curses, I am wearing gloves that I've done myself as well. So it's just that kind of thing. And it's nice always to imbue some magic in the not magic. The way that I do it in crochet is that after I've figured out the pattern, or the pattern is in my head, instead of counting, I try to repeat in my head the intention that I want for that work. So when I did, for example, a jumper for my wife, the point was always, this is protecting you, nothing can get to you. This is protecting you, nothing can get to you. It's that kind of thing. So it depends on the intention that you want to put into the work and who that work is gonna go to. When I crochet tarot pouches, which by the way, I am crocheting a lot of them and I'll be putting them on Etsy, because I had hoarded a lot of yarn that in this new phase of crochet I just want to use. There's no point in hoarding it. So actually, yeah, all the yarn that is in this cage will become a tarot pouch that will be on a Coven of Two on Etsy. So keep an eye out for that. What I think I'm going to do is that I'm going to keep the price very low. I don't never expect for the time that I put in it to be paid, but at least to cover the yarn. I think it's gonna be like 15 quid or something, and whatever is profit, so beyond the cost of the yarn and Etsy, I will probably add to the donation that I do monthly to Kuches to Gaza. So just so you know, if you're in the UK and you want a tarot pouch, these are coming, and you're gonna also help Palestinian refugees with that. Advice, if you are into crochet like I am, but you want to make stuff for people, ask them what they use and what they want. Because when I got the pattern of the Fable gloves of Hannah from Of Mars, I love them, I want to make a pair for everyone. And immediately, thankfully, I asked Raven, and Raven was like, I do not wear gloves for the life of me, I cannot have anything covering my hands. And then I asked Imogen, Sapling Tarot. Imogen was of the same mind. No, thank you, but no, thank you. And it's completely fair. We all have different sensory needs and issues. So as much as there's the good intention of wanting to do things for people you love, make sure that they can love it rather than just you imbuing it with your love. I learn, I pass on the kind of wisdom that I try to acquire. Reading. I've surprisingly tried to do more reading, which, as you know, I am dyslexic. I don't have an easy time reading. But something happened during the Christmas holidays, and I just got a lot into reading Caliban and the Witch by Silvia Federici. It's not the easiest written book, because I think what happened there was that it's an academic book that she must have first written in Italian, and I'm reading the translation therefore, because I can tell the academic sometimes too high words that it's used, but probably because English needs to have less words, has less words in the vocabulary, so in a way simplified. it actually gives me a much easier time to read than what I imagine it would be in Italian. But I don't know if it's because I'm particularly interested into the subject, if it's because every time that I read a sentence, a light goes off in my brain and I was like, oh, is that why? I don't know which one is it, but I am being pretty constant in my reading of it. It's my bedtime reading before I go to bed, and I manage to read a page or two every day, which is not an enormous number, but for me, and for how I'm used to not being able to read, that's a lot. I think I started at the beginning of December, and I am now a little over halfway through, which to me is a lot, and I do recommend it a lot as a reading, because it gives the foundation historically of the issues that capitalism has with witchcraft, and that's what made me start to believe that the opposite of capitalism is not necessarily socialism, it's witchcraft, in its sense of community and communing with the land. Read it, let me know if you agree. The last thing that I have is mostly as a content creator here on YouTube and on the other socials, and it's about having the mindset about my content pretty much the same way as they tell us we should have about spells. You know, when they tell you, you do a spell, you put your energy and intention in it, you dedicate yourself to it in those 40, 50 minutes, an hour, and then try not to obsess about the result. Just let it be. You've put it out in the universe will respond. I'm trying to do pretty much the same with content. So I make it, I put it out, and then I try to forget about it. I check always like the comments if there's someone that needs a reply, but I do not obsess necessarily on the capitalist thing about number goes up and stuff like that, because it's what can make us feel as content creators like we're never enough. The way that the analytics of YouTube are organized, it's literally to make you feel like you could always be doing more, which is a very capitalist way to look at things, but it's not a healthy way to look at things, in my experience. It is actually one of the videos that I mentioned I wanted to make, a meta video about what I've learned in having been a content creator on YouTube for 15 years, which is, it is what it is. Like in the spring of 2025, I will have been making videos on YouTube since 2010, so 15 years, yeah. So there's a lot that I have learned about it, and I vaguely mentioned it. YouTube gives this delusion of being the most collaborative kind of platform because it shares the profits that it makes from content. If you think about it, every social media can exist because as users we make content in it, whether it's a tweet written in 120, 140 characters, especially if it's the pictures on Instagram. But none of those platforms share the revenue that they get because the content is there and because we are there from the advertisers. YouTube is the only platform that does that. So it gives you the delusion that because it doesn't steal 100% of the wages from us content creators, it just steals 45%, just. It steals half of it still. But because it's the only one that doesn't steal 100%, we have this perception of being this benevolent platform. It really isn't. And actually the way that it tries to push you to extract money from your audience, it's really not a good thing. I cannot begin to tell you how many times YouTube had tried to convince me, since I got monetized in May, to open memberships. Memberships are just not something that, for what I do, can be useful to anyone here. I don't make videos in advance enough to give advanced access as something that is of value to the audience. I'm not criticizing anyone that has memberships. For what I do, it would be just a way to squeeze money out of people without me being able to give any premium. And that's the reason why, if you ever want to support what I do, that's why I have Ko-fi. On Ko-fi you can do a one-off donation. On Ko-fi you can do a repeated monthly donation like you would do on Patreon. But it's very openly said, I am not at a stage right now where I can offer extra content. If you do a donation there, it's because you like what I do and you want to support me, but that's it. It's not something more that I can give. Going forward, something that I really like and I would love to create a space for is just to do parallel play. If you are neurodivergent, you might have heard this term before. It's literally having a space. I'd imagine that it would be like a Zoom chat or something, where for an hour or two, we all do our own thing, but we are connected and we are in the same space. And we can do it in talking about things or just being silent to do our own things, and it's not considered lurking or anything. That is definitely the one thing that I would love to do. So if I ever bring actual membership to coffee, it will be on coffee anyway, but that would be the kind of thing, to share space and have a chance to talk to each other if we want to, and if we don't feel like it, we can still be with each other and feel that we are together. Because it's as close as to community as one can bring digitally. But yeah, I will always refuse to open memberships on YouTube because of that. I don't know, maybe something will change in the future, never say never. But for how things are now, I know that it's not something that would give anyone watching more value. And the way that YouTube is pushing it, because they know that they would be able to steal so much from it. Again, they take 45% out of advertisement. I don't know how much they take from membership, but it's very close to that. And I don't want that. Coffee is much more honest in that. Coffee takes the transaction fee that they are charged by Stripe, but then it lets creators keep the money that people decide to donate to them. That's the reason why I chose it as an alternative to Patreon as well for this channel. I've had Patreons in other incarnations, and I personally don't feel that that's been the best way to develop my communities. And hopefully when I'll be able to create a space that we can share, that'll be on coffee. But it's something hopefully maybe to look forward in 2025, but no promises. That's it. That was me yapping about what I think is worth giving energy to, or you know what, taking energy from. Let's go into our cocoon. Let's look at the cold winds outside and be grateful for the fact that we have 4 walls that protect us and keep us warm. And maybe there are fairy lights that make the feel cozy. And maybe you have cats. And do I need to say more? Cats. Oh gosh, and until the next video, I really, really hope that we can hex the patriarchy together, because there's so much need for it.